Looking for real stories that lift you up and light a fire inside? Welcome to Inspire and Impact, the podcast where purpose meets perseverance. This is where transformation begins and your story continues.
Welcome to the Inspire and Impact podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Rosenstein. The show features real conversations with thought leaders, healers, entrepreneurs, and creatives who share their journeys of growth, purpose, and making a meaningful impact. Today, I have the honor of interviewing Susan Stone. Susan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Daniel.
Can you share a little bit about your background with our audience?
Well, I started out in business and ran charities. In fact, I ran an international charity, and I got a little burnout, and I started doing local marketing because I had gotten my charity on big and had done big things like Oprah and Montel Williams and a bunch of different, national networks. So I kind of got a reputation locally to do marketing, and I started marketing for a hypnotherapist, and I had been in talk therapy since I was in my 20s, and never once did I think to write my therapist a thank you letter. And she kept getting all these thank you letters. And I'm like, man. So I went back to school and got my hypnotherapy license, and then just started. I'd always been fascinated by self-development and started just delving into every class, every certification I could possibly get my hands on. So I took NLP. I got certified in hypnobirthing. I got certified in EFT. I became a Course in Miracles teacher. I did just, the gambit. I even took cranial sacral therapy. I did a lot of different things because I was just so fascinated with, emotional growth and healing.
Can you share?
Finally, Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
And finally, I came across, I was listening to Science of Mind radio, and a man by the name of Rob Williams came. And I was a successful hypnotherapist. I was a clinical consultant hypnotherapist for a cancer group. I did a lot of different things. And I'm listening to Science of Mind radio, and Rob Williams comes in and he starts telling his story about how, as a therapist like me, he had changed mid-career what he was doing in life. He had gone from business into counseling. And he went to one of the chapter meetings for psychologists, and he said, only 30% of my people are making long-term change. And they're like, oh, you're doing really well. And he said, I come from a business background. If only 30% of my product is working, I'd be out of business or, sued. And he said, I developed this technique, and like all the hairs on my arm just went up. I just knew I had found all what I had searching for. And it just come to find out, all the training that he had done, all the studying that he had done, I had also done too. So when I took my first class, I was just like, I just knew it. It was like I had done it in a different life. It was amazing. It just felt right.
Can you share like a pivotal moment or experience that led you deeper into this work?
Well, yeah, it was funny because I started just delving into all their classes and taking all their classes. And after a certain amount of classes, you're allowed to go to what they call the Divine Integration Retreat. And I went to this Divine Integration Retreat, and it's like-minded therapists that have advanced into this work. And we hung out in a house for on the shore in Norfolk, Virginia. And we just kept doing balances, which is what we call our processes around our divinity. and just amazing things happened. And it just was incredible. Like, I never realized how close to the veil we all are. And when I came home, my ability, my intuitive ability was just heightened. When I touched people, I just knew things or I saw things. And I know that it was funny because I came from a very traditional medical background. My father thought chiropractors were witch doctors. So you can almost imagine what he thought of a hypnotherapist, right? So I remember sitting at the end of the seminar next to the instructor, and I'm like, there's ringing coming into my ears, and and I'm like, is that normal? Because I had kind of a crazy experience at the end of the seminar, and she started muscle testing me, and she's, you're downloading information. And 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 now when I touch people or work with people, it's happening to me right now. I get this download of a buzzing, and it's on my left side. And she told me that's when you're downloading information, and it's like connection. And at first, like when I first started doing it, I do some energy work on someone, and my knee would just start to ache, and I'd be like, ooh, what's that about? And I'd hear this word forgiveness. And I'm like, is there someone you have to forgive? And they'd start bawling. It's like I had hit and so I finally programmed into that I didn't have to be in pain to get a message. So it would come easier because I was almost taking on their stuff when I was working with them. But I also noticed too, when I was working with another person, that if I had a horrible headache or didn't feel well, and I walked into a session, that was absolutely gone. It was not there anymore because of this download. It's so funny. It's happening right now. It's almost like tinnitus on this side of my head.
So what are you downloading now? I'm curious.
I mean, I don't always know. It's just they're connecting with me. And whenever I do a session, I always set intentions like that this will be effective, powerful, and simple as possible. Will be stay on track and get to what you need. That will be open and curious. We're not going to leave judgment outside the room. And then my last intention with the client is that we're going to allow whatever there to guide us, and I always try to work with someone's belief system, whether it's, healing orbs of energy and wisdom, whether it's guardian angels or whatever it is, so that we welcome them in so that we can not only be guided, but the work can be accelerated.
Do you believe like everybody has access to this intuition or just like certain people?
No, I believe that everyone has access. I believe that our belief systems, though, can kind of cut off that access. And I mean, the experience I had at that divine integration retreat was so compelling that it kind of knocked me out of this traditional, hocus pocus, alternative medicine bent into, wow, there really is stuff going on. I know people, and I love, because I have a lot of clients that are very intuitive, and our work goes super fast because they get it and they know, and with a little assistance they understand what needs to be addressed or changed or reinforced or whatever you're working on. So everybody has it, I believe.
I've taken a couple of the classes in PSYCH-K, and I agree it's a really powerful modality. I mean, I haven't taken as many classes as you have. Can you maybe explain to people in the audience who don't know anything about it, like what exactly is PSYCH-K? Like,
yeah, well, Bruce Lipton always says that PSYCH-K is the most effective belief change technology on the planet right now. And why I find it different is because it uses kinesiology or muscle testing to pinpoint with the wisdom of your client what is either sabotaging, blocking, or needs to shift. So it's much quicker. Like, I'll give you a difference between hypnotherapy and PSYCH-K. So I teach PSYCH-K to people well, I have whole classes, I guess, and help people refine the way that they do it. So I teach them my little tips that I've learned that really work. And what happens is we discuss, and then they break off in pairs and they practice together. So I had this chiropractor who's very good and adept at muscle testing working with a very advanced practitioner. And she stood in line for the questions because, at break, they're practicing, but they're also asking questions. And she came up to me and she goes, "Susan, I have an addiction to Coke." And I'm like, "Really? You look amazing." Because she was like in her 70s and she looked 50. She's, "No, no, no, not cocaine, Coca-Cola." And I'm like, "Oh, thank God." And she got mad at me because she was like, "No, it's serious. I can't get rid of this. And I know it's awful," because she's in an alternative world and she understands what sugar and that kind of stuff does to your body. And she goes, "And the message." So we muscle tested the message for her to get rid of the addiction was my body heals itself easily and naturally. And she was adamant. She was so adamant that that was ridiculous and I had nothing to do with it. And I looked at her chiropractor partner and I said, was that the muscle test? Did she test strong? That was the message? And he said, "Yeah, I did it twice. She made me do it twice." And I said, "Just do it, because I'm having this line." I'm like, "It only takes 5 minutes. Just do it." And so she did it, and we went on the class, and I was cleaning up after class, and I started thinking about it, like, why would that be the connection? 2 weeks later, she calls me, Daniel, and she goes, "What happened? I don't understand. I haven't looked at a Coke. I haven't wanted a Coke. I haven't thought about Coke. I don't get it. What happened?" And I said to her, I said, what did your mom give you when you were little, when you didn't feel well?" And she goes, "Oh, she gave me Coke." And I'm like, "Yeah, my mom gave me ginger ale." And the older you got, the more Coke you wanted, because the more older you get, the more aches and pains and stuff. And your little brain, your young brain had associated Coke is healing because mommy gave it to me. It's nurturing and it made my tummy feel better. And so the older you got and the more issues we get physically, the more Coke you were drinking. And she's, "Yeah." And I said, "Now, if a hypnotherapist was going to go after that addiction, they might go to Coke smells like liver," or they try to associate it with something they don't like. But because the subconscious mind is all about self-preservation, unless you replace it with a different belief, it's going to override all the suggestions that a hypnotherapist is going to give you. It's not going to be long term. So if you put in, "My body heals it easily and naturally," then there's no need. The body doesn't withdraw or do any of that stuff because it knows that I don't need this intervention to heal. So I can relax and be calm. And she was amazed, even though it worked for her, she hadn't figured out what it was, then why it worked for her. So that's the difference. You use muscle testing to go into the wisdom, because who would have known that that was something her mother gave her? I wouldn't have guessed that right off the bat. And it was a 5-minute balance that got rid of an addiction that she had been struggling with for over 20 years.
That's really amazing. I mean, thank you so much for sharing that, because it's really, I think, important to explain to people who don't know about this, what the capabilities are of PSYCH-K. And so, like, I personally have had some really amazing experience using PSYCH-K myself and some of the people I work with as well. But can I ask you, how does your personal life experiences influence the way you work with your clients?
Well, it's uncanny that a lot of people that come to me have had similar life stories that I have had. And I have I was raised by an alcoholic who died of the disease and a narcissist. And at 22, I tried to commit suicide. I went through a lot of depression and had, like I said, multiple talk therapists because my parents could afford to put me into a ton of therapy. And so and I also had some repressed incest sexual abuse memories from when I was a little girl in school. And so a lot of the times I noticed that people with either sexual or physical trauma or an abuse or emotional abuse will come to me because I know that wound, I know that. And it's funny, about 2020 I got in a very major car accident because I really haven't had a lot of physical conditions. Mostly my stuff was emotional. And I had 3 different surgeries, and I was really proud of myself because I used PSYCH-K to get through it. I was T-boned on Memorial Day, and it was during COVID, and the police didn't come. And I had, unbeknownst to me, fractured my pelvis in 4 places and broke 2 bones in my back. And because we were so close to my house, my fiance at the time just, dropped me off because we were waiting for the police. And back then, it was Memorial Day. It was a huge rainstorm. It was COVID. They just didn't come. And so he dropped me off, and I went into a psyche balance to deal with it. And because it was COVID, I wasn't hot to go to the hospital either. So I didn't go for a day and a half. And when I went to the emergency room, they put me in a wheelchair and they tested me and stuff. And they came rushing in, and you can almost hear the doctors and the nurses, their rubber clogs, they're just like almost skidding on the floor. And they're like, "You need to be on morphine. Why aren't you screaming in the corner of the room?" And I was just like, "Okay, everybody calm down. Stop doing that to me." and I remember they transferred me from the hospital that I was in, which was Good Sam, a very nice hospital, but they didn't have the capabilities. So they transferred me to this inner city hospital. And I remember the doctor, he came up to me, the surgeon, and what they wanted to do was split my body in half, put my organs on the side, and then screw all these plates into my sacrum where I'd really fractured my bones. And then they were going to put an external fixator to keep my hips in line. And I'm getting ready, the nurse anesthetist is starting to put stuff in my arm. And the doctor comes up and I said, "I want you to tell me what you need my body to do." And he looked at me like I was nuts. And I just said, "Listen, I work the subconscious mind. Tell me what you want my body to do." And he said, "I want your bones to line up easily." And so I did a bunch of balances while I'm getting put under, right? My bones line up easily. Naturally, my body works perfectly with the surgeon. I'm a healing miracle, all this stuff. And the nurse's anesthetist, "You got to tell me what's going on. What are you doing?" And so when they took me out of and I'm in recovery, and the doctor's next to me is like, "Mrs. Stone, you're not going to remember this." And I'm thinking, he still doesn't know who I am. Of course I'm going to remember this. And he goes, "But I didn't have to do all that other stuff. Your bones lined up really well." So all he did was put in the external fixator, and he was amazed. And I was supposed to have that external fixator in my body for minimum of 6 weeks, and I had it out in 5. So I am living proof that your mind can help you heal your body and facilitate a good recovery.
Wow, it sounds surreal.
Well, he just kept. I mean, it's funny. Sometimes traditional medicine, they just shake their head like you're cuckoo, and I'm not going to listen to you. But I mean, and it's funny. I had a chiropractor look at because I brought my hospital report, my accident report, my X-rays into the chiropractor for a different issue, and I can't imagine. I cannot. I am so impressed at how you healed this, because I was told you're going to have arthritis in your hip, you're going to have all this stuff, because it happened to me when I was 58 years old. So, it's when you break at that age, it's easy to get those things into your body. And I haven't had any of that stuff. And he was just like, I look at your x-rays and I'm just amazed how well you've healed.
That's really amazing, and congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, that's really remarkable. I mean, like you mentioned before, like you studied a lot of different things. How do you blend like your coaching, your energy healing, the PSYCH-K in your sessions with clients?
Yeah, my mentor, the person that was the first PSYCH-K student I got to study with, and by the name of Robin Graham, and she said PSYCH-K plays really well with others, meaning other modalities. So I took her on that, and I think it was Picasso that said, "Learn the rules really well so you can break them." And I did. I studied. I was one of those people that take a class and everybody go out and have drinks. I would go home and study my notes and read before class. And I really learned the stuff, really. And then I just started playing with it. So I do add some hypnotherapy and timeline therapy and what we call in hypnotherapy, chair therapy, to some of the PSYCH-K processes. I also I spent some time being a clinical administrator at the Upledger Clinic. So energy work, had a ton of energy work on me and took some of the energy classes. So I incorporate a lot of times moving the breath and moving my hands. And so, okay, we use acupuncture points and associate belief statements with them. But I don't just stay there. I move my hands because I've been taught to move my hands. So I move my hands in different places. And it just seems I get a lot done in a session. And I've had people who have gone to long-term instructors and they're like, you do so much more, because I call it supersizing. I add things in and I supersize the order. So, but it's fun because, it's Bruce. I was listening to Bruce Lipton, and somebody had asked him from the audience, why is it so hard to change a belief? And he was saying beliefs are held in an energy matrix, and there's competing energies, like from our family system, our religion, or our economic status, or our spouses, or our friends. We have these energies that are pushing on our beliefs, and it's really hard to change in that matrix. And I thought, well, and say, hey, I can be a surrogate for a belief field and clean up whatever overriding belief is pushing on that. And then that's going to help all those people too that had that belief. And then I listened to the Hawaiian Huna guy that I forgot his name right at the top of my head. Huna is a religion out of Hawaii, and it dates back to like Egyptian times. It's found throughout, even they say even Atlantis, there was some stuff going on with that. And he said, our foundational beliefs are kind of made from almost 0 to 6. So when we're in utero, about 3 months, they've proven we have memory, we start to develop beliefs, we start to have feelings. Well, who remembers what beliefs you started believing in utero? Nobody does, right? But in that brainwave frequency of delta, which is what we are in when we're in utero, till about age 2, I can help, I can take on the energy of your delta brainwave frequency and make changes there, because if I can make changes to those foundational beliefs, that's going to affect all the other beliefs that you built those beliefs upon. So it's kind of like, what's that game, Jumanji, where you pull out the blocks? If you figure out the one that is causing all these others to happen, then it kind of come that belief system that is not good for you can come tumbling down a little easier. So I play with it a lot. I don't believe in limits. So whenever somebody comes up with a problem, to me it's fascinating to solve that. It's, how can we solve this? Because I really believe when I work with something, that with someone, the divine answers in the room, that they're there for a reason, and that the answer is in the room that we're working with. If it's not my wisdom or their wisdom, it's in one of my books, and we can muscle test to find out where the answer is, because healing, I think, is a very, what do you want to call it, divine process.
Wow, that's great. So can I ask you, like, what type of issues or challenges do you find PSYCH-K particularly effective in addressing?
Well, a lot of it has to do with stress. And I'll tell you another story. I had a client come in, and I had been working with this company, and they kept sending me their employees that were having either personal issues or issues at work. And one day, one of the co-owners came in with his 21-year-old son, and he had been diagnosed with bipolar. He was extraordinarily medicated, and he had been hospitalized almost every other month. And when I met him for the first time, he hadn't taken a shower in a week. And he was really having a hard time. And what I found was he wasn't bipolar. What he was suffering was post traumatic stress from a very violent childhood. His father had left their native country, a South American country, to try to make money. And the mother was left alone with these kids, and she wasn't mentally well, and she took her anger and frustration out on the children. And he said he'd go walk to school with visible bruises all over his body. And once we started working with that stress and that trauma and replacing it with, I am lovable, I am worthy, I'm valuable, this young man was he's such an incredible, he's brilliant, he's intuitive, but he's sensitive and kind. And that harsh treatment really kind of just messed him up. But we worked really hard for twice a week for about 3 months, and he got off of all his medications. So he stopped shaking, because he was embarrassed to be in public because he shook so much from the medication. And he started running every day. He moved back to his native country, and he started a business with a group of his friends, and they're very successful. And I check in on him every 6 months because I adore this he's now in his later 20s, and he's still doing great. He's thriving. He's just doing really, really well. So those post-traumatic, those trauma things, those anxiety things, I think it works really well with. And I firmly believe a lot of physical issues have emotional connections.
That's really interesting. I don't know how many people know that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah,
Can
yeah.
you share?
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, Louise Hay wrote that book, and there's several that, your body is telling you and all that kind of thing. And a lot of times there's similar things, like with chronic fatigue. People have such a perfectionist mindset that they've worked themselves into just overload, and their system just stops because they push themselves so hard, because of, I'm not good enough, I have to be perfect, or I'm not lovable if I'm not perfect. So there are common commonality, especially to chronic diseases, I've found.
Can you maybe share a powerful success story of a client transformation you've witnessed?
I've had a lot of people who've gone into their second bout of cancer. I had a woman come to me and she had a lot of it was tough. In fact, her oldest sister checked out because the family system was so tough. And she kind of took on the role as the oldest child. And there was a lot of abuse. Grandfather molested all the girls in the family. And she started the process of forgiving. And she had a lot of men in her life she needed to forgive. And when she started forgiving, she started getting healthier. And she was going through chemotherapy at the time. And her chemo symptoms started to lessen and lessen and lessen. And it's been 20 years now, and she's never had a reoccurrence. She hardly ever gets sick anymore, even though she went through 2 different bouts of chemotherapy. So that, if anybody's been through that, that's really hard on and can really damage your immune system. But that forgiveness work and the replacement of I am worthy and deserving of love, and I am a healing miracle, and all that stuff really has changed her life. And she is just a happy grandma now. she just spoils her grandchildren constantly. And it's amazing because her family, she's like the happy head of the family. It's really neat to see.
That's really an amazing story. I mean, it's just it still almost seems surreal that it's even possible.
Right. Well, not everything has to be like a very, very traumatic thing. I had one person who would get really close to success and then sabotage herself, and get really close to success and then sabotage herself. And we worked through it. And what it was when she was little, she did really well with grades, right? And when she come home and have good grades, she got the popsicle. But her sister, who didn't do so great at school that day, didn't get the popsicle. So she had associated my success makes others feel bad or takes away from others. So when we reprogrammed that thought, and her mother didn't mean harm, that wasn't, but when we reprogrammed that my success doesn't impact others, or I'm innocent of others' struggles, or all those beliefs around being successful, then her business just took off because she stopped sabotaging herself, because she got rid of the fear that if I do well, others are gonna suffer. So that's just a little thing, and mom just giving a popsicle. There was no physical violence or anything. It was so associated with that. But that little program back then was running her life. So it's interesting.
What kind of shifts do clients typically report after working with you using PSYCH-K?
Well, it's funny. Everybody's a little different because everybody's issues a little different. But most people, in fact, I've gotten texts before the client even gets home. I feel so much better. Usually the first initial thing is the stress and relief and anxiety starts to lift. So they feel more grounded. They feel more stable. When we get emotionally triggered, we go back into that brainstem and that parasympathetic flight, or freeze system, the alarm bell in the subconscious. And the subconscious will trigger chemicals, up to 1,200 chemicals, to cause a brain barrier around that brainstem, that primordial part of our brain. And it keeps us from accessing our higher intuitive, creative, even logical minds. It's because it really doesn't want you to think through problems, because it's ringing danger, danger, danger. It wants you to run, fight, or hide. But most things don't get solved run, fighting, or hiding. That's not our best brain. So when you can get yourself to respond differently to triggers in a more calm way, and that's the cool thing about PSYCH-K, is you can do it on your own. You don't always, because you're not always triggered in your therapist's office. You can be triggered at work. You can be triggered by your husband or your children or your significant other. That you can do simple things to get you out of that vibration of anger or frustration or hurt into more peace, even by yourself. And the more you do that, the more your brain is apt to go that direction, into the peace, and not down the rabbit hole of fear, anger, and where we become paralyzed. Did that answer your question?
Yes. You do a really great job explaining things. So thank you so much for being articulate.
Thank you.
So how do you work with clients that, like you mentioned, that may be skeptical of energy healing or the new to alternative approaches?
Oh, that's a really good question. In the beginning of my practice, people that came to seek me out were usually run through the medical mill, and they were up for trying anything. It's not so much, people are more open to it a little bit, but the first thing I do is I show them the truth tell system in our bodies. So when we say something that's not true, or think it, or feel something that doesn't feel good, all the muscles in our body go weak. And I show them that without even touching them by doing the swallow test. So I have them look down and I say your name out loud. So I'd be like, my name is Susan, swallow. And then I'd say a false name, like my name is Mickey Mouse. Like, I can't swallow. And they'll be like, wow, what is that? And then I'll do it again. I'll say I live in Florida, because that's where I live. I live in Florida, swallow. I live in Alaska. I can't even swallow. Some people they're like, it's so hard. And I'm like, yes, your subconscious has recorded everything again since utero. So it's really wise, and it knows what's true and what's not true for you. So if we tap into that, and you can really start to use your intuition to figure out what that thread that needs to be pulled. Because quite frankly, in my 20s and 30s, I spent so much money in talk therapy and group therapy. And I mean, I think I had 7 different therapists in that 20 period of time. And, I was really good at saying, okay, I'm okay now, but I really wasn't. Or if I would be okay for a little while, but then I'd hit a bump. And my therapists would always, I think I've done all I can do for you. You're good now. And some of it was pretending it, and some of it was, I'm okay. But then I'd hit a bump and I'd go all the way back again to the starting and have the depression and have the stuff. So with PSYCH-K, I mean, yeah, I have bad days like everybody else does, but I know how to get myself out of it. I don't stay as long, and usually I learn from what the situation, instead of being victim of the situation, I say, this is my highest good. What is the lesson here? What can I learn from this? How can I improve my soul? How can I expand my consciousness? And that is really why I love this work so much, because you're continuously growing and growing, and you can tweak your belief system throughout your life.
That's really amazing. What do you find to be some of the biggest obstacles you've seen people face on their healing journey?
Wow, that's another really good question. I'm also trained in emotional intelligence. And Harvard did studies around emotional intelligence, and they found that emotional intelligence is the number one predictor of success and happiness. I believe that our emotions are our internal GPS. And just simply put, if we feel good about something, that's our signal to keep doing it. If something makes us feel conflicted or angry or something, it's a red flag to say either change your thought process or change your behavior patterns. That's just a simplified way to do it. The problem with some people is that they don't see the value in feeling their emotions. They believe their emotions, if they feel all their feelings, they're going to explode or they're not going to survive it. And I had one artist come in. He was so cute. And he was like, I don't understand, Susan. Why do I have to feel those, the shame emotions and the other stuff? And I said, well, this is how I explained it to him. If you only will allow yourself to feel happiness and joy, it's kind of like me letting you paint with only purple and pink. What kind of picture are you going to have? You need all the colors of the rainbow to create a really strong, powerful picture. And there is wisdom and purpose into some of what we call the lower vibrating emotions. And if you can allow yourself, and a lot of times you have to work with the client to let them know it's safe to feel their emotions, that, you might even have to have a discussion with their younger self that, when you were little, it wasn't okay to have emotions, but you're big now and you can feel your emotions and it's safe. And you have to also say that they're capable, because some of them don't think they're capable of feeling. And I've seen a lot of people like, I don't think I'm capable of falling in love. And everybody's capable of it if you now, the thing, I guess, is the only thing that's wrong with people is that they have incorrect beliefs about who they are. Because I believe we wouldn't be here if we weren't a gift, if we weren't here to grow and expand and live in joy and as Bruce Lipton says, create heaven on earth. But if you shut down those angry and frustration emotions, you're also shutting down, you're also putting a cap on the happy emotions, your creativity, your spontaneity, your joy, so you have to feel them all for all of them to blossom. So that not being willing to feel your emotions, even your uncomfortable emotions, is probably the biggest hurdle people have.
That's really amazing. So how do you guide people through this process, like when these obstacles come up?
Well, when I first start working with someone, I send them an intake form and with a pretty history, and I talk about bullying, abandonment, and stuff like that, so that I can get to know them before they even come in. I do some work with their energy if there's something we can release prior to time. Plus, if I engage in their energy, it seems like the session goes really well when they do show up in person. And then I write a list of all the things they think is important and all the things I've ascertained from reading and doing some research on their condition and looking up. Sometimes they're so obscure I've never even heard of the condition, so I have to figure out what it is. And then we muscle test the subconscious to figure out where we should start. So where should we start? And once you start to pull the big stuff, the littler things are easier and more manageable even for them. Like, it's my goal to have my clients feel better as fast as they possibly can. I don't want someone coming to me every week for a year. I did that and I spent so much money and time on that. I want them to get to a place where they feel like they can deal with life. And if they need a tune-up because something happens, maybe they experience a death in the family or a job change or something, they can come back for a tune-up, 1 or 2 tune-ups, and they can go on their way again and feel, relatively in control of their lives and healthy and all that stuff. And I think if you get the major issues out for people, then the minor stuff isn't so traumatic and they can help themselves, or they can call me up on the phone. I always say, once I take on a client, you're mine, and do not tell me you had an awful weekend and not call me, because I know that if you're triggered and I can do a 15-minute phone call to help, because sometimes when you're triggered, those gut feelings are really up, and that's the best time to kind of get in there and surgically get them out. And if they call me, and I don't want someone every day calling me and expecting an hour of my time, but if they're hitting a block, I want them to know that they can call me, we can work through it over the phone, and they can go on and have a good weekend. They don't have to suffer.
That's good to know. Who wants to suffer, right?
I know. I mean, and a lot of times by the time you get back to therapy, because this is what happened to me, I'd be freaked out on Friday, and my session wasn't until Tuesday. And by Tuesday, it was like, oh, I'd stuffed it down enough to think, oh, it's not a big deal. And also, my sessions are a little bit longer than most people's. My sessions are usually an hour and a half to 2 hours, because I think it's really important to have them feel relief and get a lot done at the beginning, so that they know they're capable of change, that they know they can feel better.
What do you wish people knew more about the healing process?
You mean like a client?
Yeah.
Besides feelings, I try to use the analogy of baby steps. So if you had a ladder with little short rungs and you took little steps, or you had a ladder with big, huge leaps, that if you get to the top of the ladder and you have something happen, if you go now to the ladder with big, huge leaps, the next rung is way down here. If you take little baby steps, the next rung is just here. You don't fall as far. So that short, small baby steps not only reinforce, but it also is easier when you have a crisis, because you don't fall back as far. You don't backtrack as far. And because you've gotten you've built a foundation that's more solid with the baby steps. So sometimes people, they really sabotage themselves when they come in and they're like, they have all these lists of problems, and they take care of one, and then they come in and they go, well, yeah, but this is up for me now. And it's like a whack-a-mole game. And I'm like, when you come in and you're taking inventory all the time of what you haven't got, or where you haven't been, or what you haven't done, you're putting yourself back in that reality of I'm less than, or I don't have enough, or lack. So I always want them to say, appreciate the changes you have made, and know that these things are conditions, they're temporary, and they're normal. All of us make mistakes. All of us have bad days. It's a human function to learn by making mistakes. That's how we learn and grow. And to be gentle with yourself, and to know that to believe and to know that you're doing, even if you're having a bad day, you're still doing okay. There's still value in what you're experiencing. Just like Einstein said, you can either believe life is a miracle or life isn't. You get to choose. So if you can maintain a mindset, the universe is got my back, then even when something tough happens, you can say, okay, where is the good in this for me? What can my soul learn from this? And maybe why would my soul choose to learn this? Sometimes a bad boss can make you the best boss. You can learn from that bad boss,
That's really,
right?
I had that experience, so I know.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
That's great. So, what continues to inspire you in your personal and professional life?
Well, my clients the thing that I love about this work is when I work with someone, I'm also healing too. Like I said, they usually come to me with things that kind of match me, and or I learn from them. I love Bruce Lipton. I love Brené Brown. I love Anita Manjavi. I like her take on life. I like Greg Braden. I'm like a scientist, and why I like Brené Brown is because she does the research behind it, and so I like that science backing up what I know to be true. But it's funny because I read self help books. You see me at the beach, I got that self help book I'm reading. It's like it's like, what are you doing? It's so funny. We belong to a beach club, and I'm doing a workbook, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm just learning more," And they're like, "Yeah, everybody else has got their romance novel off. I'm doing a workbook." But I'm fascinated by it. I think the mind is fascinating, and there's no better experience to help someone feel better about themselves or their life. I mean, or to get someone to help someone, facilitate someone to do something they didn't think they could do. I mean, haven't you found that? It's so amazing. I know that you've helped a lot of people, and it's so amazing when somebody says, "I feel better." Yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. When I coach clients, like I get a lot of positive feedback. It definitely makes me feel a lot better that you're helping people out.
Right. And you feel like you have a purpose, and that's what drives me to learn more. And it's funny, I swear that whatever I'm learning at the moment, God, whoever it is, sends me somebody that needs that knowledge. It's uncanny.
So, do you have any upcoming projects, workshops, or programs that you're excited about you'd like to share with the audience?
I think I'm working on a 6-week program that I haven't put out there yet, about how to become a happier version of yourself. And we're going to touch on different topics like relationships, self-esteem, finances, different topics to clean out some of the even health and well-being stuff, to clean out some of the stuff, because you know a lot of times people retire and they think they're done, and it's no, there's still a lot left in life to experience and grow. And I mean, I wish I had found this work when I was 22, when I had tried to commit suicide, because I went through a lot of agony in my 30s and 40s. But well, 20s and 30s, I guess. 40s I started to get better. But that idea that we can still grow, that life doesn't end when we stop working.
Great. If somebody had a question about today's interview or they're interested in working with you, what are the best ways for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, I have a website, S2 Evolution. S is in Susan Stone, S and the number 2 evolution.com. Or you can, and my phone number's on there, if you want a 10-15 minute free consult and talk about how this work might help you, I'm more than happy to do that. I'm also not just part scientist, I'm a little bit teacher at heart. So I have I have like little handouts that I can email people that show, the changes that happen in the brain, or things that like these studies on emotional intelligence, and all that kind of stuff. So you can kind of see also how you're feeling emotionally will affect your reality. They've done a lot of associations with that. When we're in those higher vibrating emotions like joy, love, and peace, we have more synchronicity. It's like living in the zone. Things come easier. And when we're in that frustration and anger, we get paralyzed. So they've done, things of that nature. So I love sharing and just showing people what's available.
So, do you have any final thoughts before we end this interview, like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of the theme is no matter how old you are, no matter what you've been through, you're here for a reason. You're important and necessary. You deserve to enjoy your life. And change can happen at any age, and I think you don't have to struggle like I did when I was younger. I think you can do it much more quickly and easily. I think PSYCH-K, old traditional talk therapy was like old surgery where they cut you down the middle and put your stuff on the table and work out and cut it out. And PSYCH-K is more like laser surgery, like they just pinpoint what it is. You don't have to cut everything to pieces, and then you heal quicker and faster, and it's not as traumatic. Recovery is easier. So everybody has that capacity to change and feel
Well,
better.
Susan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and
Of
sharing
course.
all your experiences and your wisdom. You said you know so much, and you're such a wonderful person to listen to, and I think you're such a huge inspiration. You've been through so much, and yet you're on the other side, and you're smiling and helping all these other people. So you're a huge inspiration to a lot of people. So I was very happy that you were able to come on the podcast and share all this with everybody at the audience. So thank you so much for coming on.
Of course, I appreciate you too. This is great what you're doing. I adore you. I think so highly of you, and whatever you want me involved with, I will gladly join.
Great.